they offered me like, it was like $2,000 or $3,000, and I could not grasp that. Like I could not for the life. I was driving down, I had to pull over, and I was looking at my phone, and I'm like, are these people actually going to pay me this?
Money talks, let's keep it real.
Excited to have you on today.
Yeah.
To Money Talks.
Yeah.
So this is New Money Nate. I'm going to give a little intro. We just met, but
Is this recording?
Yeah, we're recording.
Cool.
We're recording. We were right into it.
Okay, all right, man. All right.
You know, it's better to just like press record and let it go, and then we just flow into it.
100%.
So New Money Nate, you're a creator in the personal finance space. 500 and something thousand on TikTok, 100K on Instagram.
Just under.
All right, but who's really counting? You know? Rounding up. And personal finance. And your focus is on Canada.
Yeah.
Which I'm Canadian.
Right.
I'm rocking some OVO Canada shit. So this is a real Canadian episode. But yeah, I'm really interested in hearing everything about your journey. So first of all, like as a creator, how does your business work? Like your business as a creator?
Yeah. So basically it's like an ads business, man. I make pretty much all of my money at the moment from advertisements. So whether that's a brand deal or
Bring us just in a little bit.
Sponsored post or affiliate marketing, everything sort of comes from advertising. And so that's how the majority of, and if it's YouTube, it's AdSense. So that's how the majority of creators make their bread. And eventually the goal is to obviously have an external business where you make money off that as well. And, you have something that's a little bit diversified, but at the moment it's mostly advertising, brand deals, sponsorships.
And so what's an example of that? Like, let's say for TikTok, so a company will promote a video type thing and you'll be like, hey, I'll look at your product and talk about it, and it'll be like a sponsored post.
Yeah. Like brand will be like, hey Nate, we love what you do. We got this campaign. We'd love like 2 TikTok videos. Be like, okay, here's the rate, and like they pay me to post it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's generally how it goes. So yeah.
So and then is there a limit of how many you'll do per week or per month type thing?
I mean, it's, you take your deal flow as it comes. Obviously you don't want to be just constantly sponsored posts because like you're just going to kill your content like that. But I think for me, trying to, go with partners that integrate with my content as easily as possible. Then that way, I can do as much more because it's a lot more seamless as opposed to these sort of like really commercial brand deals that kind of kill my audience and like, oh my God, another ad from Nate. So I try to vet brands for that so that like if we do stuff like, and I can do it frequently and it's not a big deal because it's already sort of aligned with the stuff I'm already making. So.
Yeah, I've seen a huge shift the last couple years. I don't know, where like it used to be like so obvious, and like the sponsored posts, especially on Instagram, were very like, it was like feeding the audience content they want. And then like every 5-8 posts was like, hey, like you want to buy this vitamin T, and like it was just like nobody actually or a tiny percentage wanted it.
Dude,
and then but they kept following for other things. And now I'm seeing like a lot of stuff that I get fed that's like sponsored posts is actually like extremely useful.
Yeah, right.
Especially like personal finance. Like you'll be like, check this credit card or like check this new like type of bank account, and like it's actually better than like what I use currently. And I'm like, oh, like that's not only like helpful, but like makes me more money and like you get paid off it. So I feel like there's been a switch the last couple of years.
100%, man. And I push so hard against brands sometimes to like, hey, like nobody's going to watch this. If we just say these commercial lines, nobody's going to watch it. It's not going to do bad. And then you're going to come to me and you're going to say, hey, Nate, why didn't this perform? And I'm going to say it's because it's made like an ad. But if you make a TikTok, an actual TikTok or an actual Instagram post where it's adding value and the person that's watching it is actually getting something from it, like an actual proper recommendation or like, the best XYZ in Canada or the US or whatever, it's like people have a reason to like actually watch the thing and be like, maybe I should be using that. And so I always try to push for that. Like we need to be adding value with every single sponsored anything, because 1, it's going to perform a lot better. And 2, like, it's just good content. It looks a lot more seamless into my content as well. And so that has been the shift. And that's why some brands are being, very successful and other brands are still sort of not, and they don't see what the pizzazz is with influencer marketing. And it's like, I'm telling you, it's because they're trying to take a traditional approach rather than letting like the influencer actually like make content that's like endemic to their
Yeah,
style.
yeah. Maybe just pull it in a bit.
Yeah, no.
I'm just making sure we get the best audio here.
Of course, man. Of course.
Okay, so you're obviously great at making things go viral.
Thank you, man.
500,000 on TikTok. Like, what's kind of the secret to making things go viral? Obviously, there's many things, but
yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is studying, and I would say it's studying your niche, it's studying your platform, and it's looking at who are the best people in your space, and like really studying and knowing who, like the best of the best. What are they doing? How are they making it? How do they go about it? How do they grow? And just learning as much as you possibly can about the come up and like what people are doing. And then you look at that, you sort of aggregate all of that and you say, hey, okay, I'm not just going to rip this off, but like, how can I take inspiration from all these different people doing it at such a big level? And then how do I add my twist to it? And then you just continuously iterate and just make posts with things that you need evidence as to why this is going to go viral. It can't just be on a whim because you're going to be banging your head against the wall. And so studying whatever niche it is, whether it's fashion or fitness or finance or whatever, like study what the best creators are doing there. Take that, add your spin to it, and just keep friggin' at it. And that's literally all I did.
Mm-hmm. Who are you looking up to when you started off?
I mean, honestly, I started with a podcast and I wanted to promote the podcast through Instagram because I know that like podcasts don't have discoverability. And so banging it out. I mean, obviously we're
learning that right now.
Yeah. So you have to be promoting it somewhere. So I started on Instagram, and this was right before the pandemic. The pandemic hit, so I started going really hard at that. And how I started to grow was I'd watch a bunch of YouTube videos. I'd look at some of the top personal finance creators. A guy like Jeremy Schneider, who's still doing it, Personal Finance Club. Like looking at his posts, how is he adding value? Looking at like I remember this guy Finance Josh back in the day. Like he was doing these like theme posts on Instagram, and I really jived with what he did. And so I was looking at a lot of creators like that and like, man, how can I do this and like promote the pod? And so that's how I started to like work it. And then the end of 2020 is when I started on TikTok. That's when Reels came out, and that's when everything sort of took off. And I just applied the same thing. Who are the best, personal finance creators? I remember there was people that I know today, like, Daniel Isles and some other, finance creators were doing it big. And I'm like, man, like, what are they doing? What are they talking about? How can I add, Nate's spin to that? And I just kept doing that over time. And eventually, like, I kind of broke through.
What was your spin? Like when you were coming at it, you were like, okay, these are the things that they're doing. What did you kind of do differently? Or?
Yeah, man. It was like more informal, more like slang, more like laid back, more like less stiff. These days, I really try to put a big emphasis in the acting and try to make it as organic as possible. And like we're actually talking right now, and how can I capture that as opposed to, like just this robotic sort of back and forth, if it's a skit or sort of like delivery. It's adding that zest. And then also like I love interjecting humor into some of my skits and some of my videos to just like add, some zest to it. Because again, personal finance it can be very boring, right? Budgeting and numbers and dry, right? So I thought, hey man, I add some flavor. I love to have a good time, and how can I interject my personality into the content? And so that's what I did, bro. And like that's why I love making it so much. It's because it's just being me.
Yeah. That's cool. That was one of my. For me, it was like I want to make content. I want to talk about business. I want to have these conversations, and I was anyway. Like we met the other day, we probably had an hour conversation about 100%. All this stuff, and so that was my inspiration for the podcast. I always found it very unnatural to like hold a camera and just be like, "Hey guys," like da 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 da.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of, I was like, let's do a podcast, and then we can get that as like the faucet of content for everything. So you went from podcast to, do you now focus just on the shorts? You just straight up do the skits and stuff?
Yeah. It's like pretty much, well, it's also YouTube. I do long form YouTube videos. So that's like my big focus right now, like newer focus. But I mean, I still mostly do the short form videos across all the platforms, the TikTok, Reels, Shorts, things like that.
Yeah. Okay. So we're talking about going viral.
Yeah.
Let's say, what can we say right now to go viral? This is like a very meta conversation. Like let's think of some things on this podcast as like a learning thing, and for people listening, and for me, just like what can we say right now that'll be viral?
I mean, there's a number of things you can. I mean, I've had a few different hooks. It's all about the hook. So
The hook.
when it starts off, so like if we were to say,
So the first 5-10 second thing.
so like if I right now I did a clip and I was like, how I made my first $100,000 was 3 things. That's the hook. And then I could say like, it was, automating my finances. It was, increasing my income, putting money back into myself, investing in myself. And it was reinvesting every last dollar. And like, that's how I did it. Like that would be an example of a, sort of clip. It's really like adding that dollar value. I mean, I've had videos where, it's like a job offer. People like really get up in arms in a good and like bad way of like job offers. They have to feel very strongly about negotiating a job offer. And so I did this skit where it was just like starting salary. Hey, you got the job. Starting salary is going to be $50,000. And boom, people are like, whoa, 50,000. That's a large number. They're just like, what is he talking about? Am I in like some sort of skit or whatever? And then it's this little back and forth of like the guy negotiating and be like, hey, I really appreciate the offer, but I'm looking more for 65,000. Like, and they're going back and forth. And so I feel like putting the dollars first, I find that like, especially with my thing, the $1 million formula or the $1 million investment, or the best investment in Canada, like really adding that up front and then just trying to deliver on that is like how you make viral content.
Okay. I love that. That's a cool like breakdown. Okay. So let's try one. So I'll be like, so how did you make your first 100,000?
How did I make my first 100,000? Well, honestly, it was from practicing a lot of good habits early on and like cleaning up my money. And so that was like paying off my high interest debt, having a nice little savings fund and like having a good like foundation. And then it was just constantly trying to make more money each summer. So when I was in school, every summer I set a goal of amount of money that I wanted to make, and then save, right? And so first summer was like 10K. I was like, man, how do I make $10,000? Back in the day, like it was, 10K was like the craziest thing in the world to me. I was like, man, if I could do 4 months, I could make $10,000. Like, man, that's like,
that's a good summer.
That's like, that's a good summer.
I remember.
It's like for a student, like, 30,000.
What were you doing to make the 10K?
What's that?
What'd you do to make the 10K?
I was bartending and like side hustles. So I would do like Facebook Marketplace. I would like flip things. I would like, I'd go on the side of the road and like there'd be somebody garage sailing, like the Gary Vee stuff, right? Yep. I'd go literally from him, like inspired by him as to why like I would do that. And so would get it and I'd flip it and make 50, 60 bucks. It was like free money to me. And so I did that a ton, was bartending. And then I also do an internship. And so that first summer I made 10K. And then the next summer I said 15K. I want to make 15K. Had a similar sort of internship, bartended more at a better place, worked more hours, was flipping more stuff. I think that summer I hit 20. And then the summer after that, I'm like, okay, well, 25, hit 25. And then I was coming out of school and I was like, man, like I've got like 30, 40K here. Like I can pay off my student loans if I want to, I wouldn't yet because they weren't accruing interest. But I could, I was well positioned and I came out of school.
That's actually a really good, it's a simple thing, but so many people don't understand that concept, right? So student loans, right? You owe money. So a lot of people feel like debt, this horrible, bad thing. I owe someone money. But if there's no interest to it, that's a positive thing.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, inflation eats away at debt if there's no interest, right? And so the value that you owe over time becomes less and less because the dollar is inflated over time. So if there's no interest to offset that and there's no cost to you, you're basically like the inflation is eating away at the debt. And so it's like why would I pay it right now? It's getting like the 10K I owe today is going to be worth less in a year if there's no interest on it. Now, if there is, that's the calculation that you have to figure out. But there's no rush. I understand people have feelings around that and like it just feels like a burden. They want to get rid of them. And that's totally fine. Yeah. But from a dollars and cents perspective, it doesn't really add up. It's got to be more of like an emotional thing as to why you would do that if there's no interest.
It took me a long time to understand that. I remember I'd pay things off in full just because in my head I was like, I don't want to have this like thing that I owe money, but like, there'd be payment plans on things, maybe a 3-month, 5-month, 10-month plan, whatever it is, and it'd be interest free. Right. And like you should always take that, right? Sure. Unless there's some other reason, it took me a long time to understand like that's free money. Yeah. Like even if you have the money in your bank, don't pay it off. Yeah. Right.
Dude. And it's so interesting you say that because I think I paid like 15 or 20K of it off of it because it was right before the interest was going to hit. And then the friggin' Canadian government was like, no interest for 2 years. And I was like, holy shit. Like I totally just did that,
Damn.
but it's all good. And so I just think that, yeah, like, understanding that concept and like things like that's why I make content, man. So people can know that, not only know that there's no interest accruing on their federal loans, right? But also like there's no rush in a lot of cases if it's not accruing, right? And so that's like my biggest. Did you have to take out student debt or
no?
No, you didn't.
No, I mean I went in Quebec in Canada,
right? Where'd you go?
To Concordia.
Oh, okay, sick. So downtown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're like in province, I think it's $2,000 a year or something.
My God,
it's a semester, so $4,000 Canadian a year. Which for Americans, when I tell them that, it's like
mind blowing.
Yeah, they pay 40, 50K a year to go to like universities out here, and I'm like, I mean, mine was basically free. You know,
no.
I wasn't much of a student though. I didn't really go to class.
Were you grinding in the summers and like you were?
Yeah, I was mostly teaching tennis. That was my summer job for like all those years until I was like mid-20s. Actually, I was doing that, and yeah, it was a pretty good gig. Like, was making good money in the summer. I was outside all the time, and then I had a cookie company, so I was grinding that from when I was like 20 or 21, and it was kind of like building the business, teaching tennis for some cash, and on my side stuff too, flipping stuff too, always,
That's all. Was there a point, I feel like I'm interviewing you now, but was there a point like when the cookie business like took off and you're like, yo, this could be like huge?
There was different points, but a business like that is really hard to like, you're trying to build a brand. So basically and like I started it and ran it very, very lean, like didn't get investment money, didn't really hire anyone, did everything myself. And still though, like all the money kind of went back into building the brand. So whether it was like doing an activation or handing out samples, like even that, right? Like I was like super early on the influencer marketing stuff. And
were you?
And I was like sending cookies. This was kind of before people were you had to pay people to post. It was just like, I'd find all the food accounts, send them a box of cookies.
Like say less.
That starts adding up, like samples and stuff. So it's pretty much, all the money pretty much went back into building the brand.
So how much return did you see on influencer marketing? Like, for example, like, do you have a story in mind where you like sent a box of cookies and then you made like, you're like $30,000 on your Shopify thing or something like that?
It was honestly, it was too early, and I was like not doing it in a super like analytical way back then. So I don't know. It was more just like, I remember we did an Easter egg cookie with the Cadbury mini eggs in the cookie.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest campaign we did. And it was like, I think we reached like 5 million people on Instagram, and that was in early 2014.
Damn.
So, and that, now that's nothing, I guess, on social media, but almost 10 years ago. And I remember that was kind of it. I was just going through these accounts, 80K followers, 150K followers, whatever it was, maybe 100 million, and just hitting them up. And they're like, can I send you a box? But that costs money, so it was doing it in a creative way, but it still adds up,
True.
So, but, I think there's a lot. So you have your own business.
Mm-hmm.
How do you separate personal and business finances? Because that's something for me that I'm still trying to understand.
Yeah.
Because I never had a salary.
Right.
I was always like going from those things to building my company. And like, it's hard to compute when you're like, oh, like this money goes back into the business, but I made the money, but what's profit? And like, so how do you kind of think of that, separating the two?
Absolutely. There's this great book called Profit First by Mike Michalowicz, I believe. And that I read that in university, and that really shaped how I view business. And I'm glad I did before I ever had like a formal business. And so how I do it is you have to keep it really, really clean. Like your personal's over here, business is over here. But not only that, you can't just have this like one business account with a pile of money. So I have an operation account, like an operating account, I have a profit account, tax account. I have multiple accounts so that I'm nice and organized. And so when you have multiple business accounts, that like it just changes the way you see the business, and that this is allocated for this is allocated for that. And that's how I run my personal accounts too. So everything needs. It sounds like it's like over. You don't need that many accounts, but I'm telling you, like a lot of banks now offer complimentary like multiple savings accounts if you want, and it's just a great accounting practice to have ways to like segregate your finances so that it's just way more clean. So you don't look at this like pile of money. You're like, well, I got taxes due here and this bill there. Like, it's like, no, like my taxes are set aside. My rainy day fund is set aside. Everything is set. They're called like sinking funds for more personal. And then for business, it's just like different, operational accounts. And so that has been fantastic because I started with that in mind, and I'm not really confused about where I stand with anything. Like, I know, what my operation, like my payroll is going to be, or like if it's not payroll, it's just contractors. And I know what, savings I have. I know my tax bill, like everything is nice and clean. Obviously that comes with working with an accountant as well. But if you start with that in mind and you have that organization, like it makes everything way better.
So, okay, that's kind of the opposite of how I started. So
yeah.
But you're right. That is how you should think of it.
Yeah.
What's a weird thing that you do with money? Either a practice or just something you spend on.
That's a great question, man. A weird thing that I do with money. Give me an example. Do you have an example of for you? And then maybe it'll like spark something for me.
I'd say we were talking actually with JT last time. We were talking about how my thesis is like everything's an investment.
Right.
So, for example, I bought a $5,000 cold plunge.
Oh, damn.
And a lot of people are like, you're insane. That's so much money to spend on something like that. But I look at it like, well, if it increases my productivity by even 1%, it's worth it because that $5,000 will come back over time.
Yeah.
Another way I kind of look at things is, well, 5,000 sounds like a big number, but what if you say, I'm going to keep this for, 8 years and divide it by a monthly cost. And now you're talking about like, $80 a month.
Right.
Oh, I didn't do the math. But,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When you kind of break things down a little differently, another thing, I buy a coffee, every morning. I go for a walk and I buy an expensive coffee. And some people are like, that's such a waste of money, talking $5-6 in the morning. But for me, it's a routine and it's like clearing my mind. I know when I wake up, that's what I do. I throw my clothes on, I go for a walk. So I'm getting air, sun, exercise.
Right.
I go talk to someone, get a coffee. It's just my routine. And that $5, I see a return, right?
Yeah.
It's my mindset to start the day and whatever.
Right.
And so like things like that, where it's like, it means more than the number on paper. Like, yes, you can make your own coffee, but like for me, walking and doing that adds more to my day than like if I were to like wake up and first thing I'm making coffee by myself,
Yeah, that doesn't make as, I see exactly what you're saying. Like it's just more conducive to your routine. I would say like, dude, honestly, like one thing that people might be considered weird is the fact that I'm in LA right now. So like I came out here for the month to build out my network. I didn't really have like a crisp, event or itinerary in mind. Like I'm a planner. I try to be a planner. I'm naturally not, but I try to be. But
That's good.
I definitely had to like, most people will have stuff lined up for you out here. But I honestly had a few different things here and there, like 1 or 2 key events. But I decided to stay here for a month to build out my network and meet people like yourself. I mean, we're sitting here. I met you the other day and at a creator meetup and I've been trying to go to a lot of those.
Yeah.
And once you like people, it cost me several $1,000s to be out here, just like with all the food and the flights and the accommodations for the month. Like people are like, are you insane? Like, why are you spending this money? But I feel like it's such an investment and it's all about how you frame things. Right. And so for me, I'm generally, a naturally sort of a cheaper guy. But when it comes to stuff like this and the opportunity cost, meeting people out here and seeing what's, and experiencing things, I know that I'm going to get a benefit somewhere, some serendipitous way down the line. And so it makes a lot of sense. But on the surface, like people are like, why are you a whole month? Why are you out there? It's like, I feel like it would take me a month to get and I was right. Like honestly,
it's also
like
minus 40 in Toronto right now.
It's also it's not too bad down
so
here.
It's worth it for any amount.
It's not that bad down here. So, that's people have personal finances, personal. People got different reasons as to what they want and how they want it and their motivations. And so if you can just make sure that you're building towards something and building towards long-term wealth, like how you get there, there's a million different ways to get there. And so if you ever hear anybody saying that this is the way to get rich or this is the way to make 100K or $1 million, like they're just suggesting one of many different ways.
Yeah. It's funny you say that because I lived in Toronto before and I moved to LA, and I'd say like one of the main things of moving here was to maximize serendipity, which is what you said. And it's like, yes, you can do, meeting a lot of people and let's say meeting a lot of creators and meeting a lot of artists, and you can do that in any city. But like when you're in a place like LA, that the opportunity for it is 10 times, 50 times,
it's
whatever
crazy.
the number is.
It's so nuts.
And so all you can do is in life is maximize your chances of getting what you want or whatever.
100%.
Right. So like, and I didn't really like frame it that way until I was out here. And then I just realized like, I'm trying to, and it's all about your goals, but like for me, like money and life is about just like, you know, getting to freedom and like doing the most cool shit possible. It's not to be the richest person in the world.
Right.
Cause like I see so many like old, angry, rich people that just die with all this money and like, well, what's the point?
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
And so like, yeah, LA is just that. You were asking me before we started recording, even why I moved to LA. Yeah. And that's it. Like there's just the most opportunity for cool shit. I feel like for at least what I like.
So is that like for you now, is that why, like, obviously people, you know, you see it all the time. People are leaving LA, they're going to Texas or Florida or Nevada or whatever. Like, is that like the taxes like worth being here in the network and things like that, like putting up with that?
Yeah, I think like people that I really disagree with that whole thing of like, I'm going to move because of the taxes or whatever. It's like most people that are saying that don't even make enough money that it's worth talking about. You know what I mean? Like if you make like $100K a year and you're talking about a difference of like $8,000 or whatever, you know what I mean? Live where you want to live. And if you have 100 million and it costs you millions and millions of dollars, also live where you want to live. Because that's the point of getting $100 million. So like, I don't really see who, like at what point it's worth making a decision based on taxes. If you also love Texas or whatever, then cool, you know? Oh yeah, I like it there and I get to, you know, save some extra money. But like, I just don't think it's worth. The point of getting rich is to make decisions based on what you want to do more and more, not less. You know? And you don't want to be driven by the money. You want to, it's a tool. You can't let it use you, you know?
Yeah, dude, that's so true. Like if you have all the money in the world, like what does it matter if you're paying more to the government? I mean, that's a good point. I just think people do get hung up on like, oh, you got an extra car. I could have did this. I could have done that. I could have made this money in my account if and it's just like, you know, you're right. Like, it's like, what's the point of having all this money if you don't want to live where you want to live?
I mean, moving from Canada, that cost me like a lot of money. Forget the taxes. It was just like, you know, living one US dollar is $1.35 Canadian. So I was used to living, you know, I mean, just every little thing. You're out here, like I'm sure, you know, every meal, every coffee, you're like, oh, it's $6, which is, and here LA is already mega expensive. And then on top of it, you're like, oh, $6, it's actually $8.50.
Been getting killed.
Damn, you know, it starts to really add up. And for the first while I was doing that, and then I was like, I got to stop. You know, I'm staying out here. I got to just, and you just, I think especially when you're someone who's not, you know, earning a salary, a set thing, you have a business, you have the opportunity, you're thinking about like different ways to make money. I think your mind adjusts to what's around you.
Right.
So, you know, like being out here and seeing some of the most successful people in business and entertainment, artists, you see the best of the best and you're like, you just try and rise to that. So, you know, even though you're poorer, you're trying to elevate more. So.
I definitely need to hammer that in my head. Cause like, I think it would be dope to be out here at some point. And that's one of the things, man. I mean, obviously the immigration and all of that is not easy at all. But then it's also like taxes and this and that. But I mean, Canada, there's a lot of taxes too. So it's, I don't know how much different would it be?
Actually,
you know?
Isn't Canada like higher taxes?
Like I think the highest marginal rate is higher than
I think it's like 50 something, 54%.
It's over 50%. Now, hopefully you get an accountant that like straightens that out for you and like is strategic about that stuff. But at the end of the day, like Canada's not sweet with taxes either. So it's it's not that big.
Yeah, I just wouldn't make decisions based on taxes. I feel like it's one of those things people just love talking about. And it's like it really doesn't even affect them.
I would always, you always hear the thing, you never make an investment based off the tax benefits only, right? I mean, obviously there's it's great to have, you know, investments that have, you know, write-offs, things like that, but like you should never make a business decision or like, you know, start a business just for tax purposes. Now, unless it's like a holding company and it's like a tax planning strategy and like that's different. That's not what I'm talking about. You know, starting a venture purely for the tax benefits, like more often than not doesn't really make sense. There has to be some like underlying business model or cash flow.
That's just a bonus. Okay, what's your most popular video or type of video?
My most popular video, The most views I ever got was on a negotiation video. That was like 6 or 7 million.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I saw that one. So it was about you playing a skit of somebody negotiating with their boss about a raise, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And why do you think that was so popular?
People have very set ways of like money. Like people have a very like money is just so taboo, and people have a certain affinity to think one way or another about money. And so asking for a raise or a job offer for somebody who never thought that it was possible, obviously is going to like naturally just say, oh, it's not possible, because if it was possible, I would have been doing it, or that's not going to work. Or they asked their boss for a raise and they got told no, and they say, oh, it doesn't work. And so people are going to be motivated to disprove that if they weren't the person that like negotiated or got the raise or the higher job offer, right? So they're genuinely, I think the reason it did so well is because so many people disagreed, and they say, well, next guy's going to take the job. Like all the comments.
So it evoked emotion.
Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, it evoked a lot of emotion, a lot of like sentiment, like good and bad. Like, yeah, you should be, or, stories about, I asked for $15,000 or $20,000 more, and they said yes. I can't believe it. Like, what if I didn't, say anything? Versus somebody who doesn't think it's possible. They're going to obviously be defensive and be like, hey man, like it doesn't work. Like, or else, I'm an idiot, and like I should have been asking all these years. Like, no way that can be true. Like, this guy's just full of it. And so that was the sort of like controversial angle of it. And so I learned a ton about that with viral content. It's like it doesn't always need to be super controversial, but like that can help. And if you're coming from an angle that like portrays both sides well, and you can make a nuanced argument, but like you can still tap into that like emotion. Like that's the formula. And every single piece of viral content, like it's evoking deep emotion one way or another.
That makes sense. So that's interesting. What do you think about like transparency with money? Like people are so, like you said, people are so weird with money. And like, don't want to say their salary, are scared. And I always found it kind of funny because I mean, I'm pretty open,
Right.
like
Yeah.
I think it only helps people to discuss what you make and what's possible.
For
and
sure.
And I've appreciated like people being open with me over the years.
Yeah.
And sometimes over the years I remember hearing people like, oh, I make this many millions or whatever, and it's like it just opens your eyes like, oh, this is possible.
It is. And I that's the biggest thing. It's like opening the minds and seeing what's possible. I know a YouTuber, Graham Stephan, yearly posts his videos about how much he makes from AdSense. Now, he doesn't really get into the weeds about the brand deals, but I think he gives a high level number.
Yeah.
The guy's pulling in millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. And so when you're watching that as a viewer, if you've never made content before, it's kind of like, okay, that's just sort of like aspirational. It's kind of far away. But like, if you're a guy like me who's on the come up and you're like, yo, like that's how big this thing could get. Like that is like mad motivating. And so, man, I think, honestly,
do you like tell your audience and stuff how much you make?
I share it. I mean, right now, like my business does anywhere from like 15 to 20 grand a month. Some months are higher, some months are lower, but that's like on average. And so it's pretty solid.
All from sponsored posts,
things like that. And so some months are better than others, like I said, but like I'm super, super blessed and happy to be doing what I'm doing and been able to I quit my job a year and a half ago, and been just full time doing this, doing what I love. And so it just truly is like awesome to share that. And I love telling, my audience about like how, I was, year over year, I've been making more and more money because I'm working towards that. And like the perspective shift. I mean, I couldn't, but like my first brand deal, man, like I remember, I can't say exactly who, or obviously, blah, blah, blah. But like, I remember they offered me like, it was like $2,000 or $3,000, and I could not grasp that. Like I could not for the life. I was driving down. I had to pull over, and I was looking at my phone, and I'm like, are these people actually going to pay me this? Are they out of their friggin' mind?
Are they?
It's like
better get it
thousands
fast
of dollars.
before they take it away.
It took me like 2 weeks, 2-3 weeks of work. Like that's how you think about it, right? They're just going to do that for me to make it like 30-second. Like what? And that's what like changed everything for me. And it was like, okay, well, what if I asked for like 4, 5, 6? Like how big could this get? And like every time you push yourself and you put yourself out there, like you're going to break that sort of glass and shatter that glass. And you're going to be like, wow, like it's way more possible. It's way more possible than people think.
Yeah. That's I think kind of it takes a long time to realize that. Because you always hear, oh, this guy makes millions and this and that. But I think now what's cool about the whole kind of creator economy and how people are, like Graham, like posting this stuff,
Right.
it's like you really see it and you're like, oh, no. This is like really, these are real numbers. This
Right.
isn't people just being like, I make millions of dollars. This is
Right.
like, oh, this guy made like $487,000 in June and
Right.
522. And you're like, whoa, like
Yeah,
people make
exactly.
this kind of money.
Yeah,
it's not just, it's not just magic. It's cool.
No, it is cool, man. And I mean, like every day, like I try to like listen to content or read things or take in information that like informs my perspective and changes. And sometimes it's tough because you're kind of in a rut, or if you're listening to this and it's like, man, like it must be nice kind of thing. But if you're just continuously like chipping away and like asking how you could do it bigger and better, like
what's your goal with it?
You'll surprise
Do you
yourself.
have a money goal?
I think my goal, I've always wanted $1 million liquid, like $1 million in the bank. Like I'm ways away from that, but that has been like the thing that just like not $1 million assets, not $1 million
Yeah.
here. I'm like in the bank.
Look at it and
$1 million, 7 figures. Like that has been something I've thought about for like as long as I can remember. And so I would say that's like one of the goals. It's not like the goal, but like, man, like you have $1 million liquid, like frig, bro. Like that is like, so I'm working towards that for sure. And then, obviously some more, wholesome goals of, trying to build the mission and the content and everything. And like, that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
And creating a sustainable business, taking care of my family, things like that. But dude, $1 million liquid.
That's the goal. Million Canadian or US?
Well, I mean, obviously US, right? So, but $1 million liquid would be sick. Sick. And I'll tell you, like, we were talking about my first million, those guys, like, talk about perspective shifts. Like they blow my mind every episode, and they really help me. Like they help me take in like, yo, like you could spin up a business and like do 10 figures a month or 10 figures, 10,000 a month. And like there's a formula to it. It's not easy, but it's simple. Like there's a simple sort of formula.
Yeah.
It's not easy, but like you can go out and do that.
Yeah.
And like here are guys that are doing that. And then I'm like, oh man, I'm kind of in that world. Like I've seen how your perspective can change so significantly. And so if you're always seeking that out and looking to inform yourself about like, how can I make more money? How can I do better? Or how can I advance myself? Blah, blah, blah. Like, and talk to people and hear from people that are doing it, like, and be open-minded.
Yeah.
It's just like, man, maybe I can get to $1 million liquid, bro.
Yeah. One of the biggest differences I've found from growing up in Canada and now being in the US is that kind of mindset where it's just like, of all my friends I grew up with, like none had businesses and stuff. It's like just most people, especially Montreal versus Toronto, it's just like, it's a pretty cheap city. People have jobs. There aren't that many entrepreneurs. There aren't that many people just like doing their own thing. And also time this now versus 20 years ago is a big difference too,
Right.
I think. But just hearing like in the US, like risk and reward are seen differently.
Right.
Kind of. I feel like you see a lot of entrepreneurs go take a bunch of risk, do it all again. Like it's kind of rewarded to take risk, even if you fail.
Of course.
Whereas, I don't know. I feel like Canada is a little bit more watered down, a little bit more like safe. You know? People are just safe. Think safer.
Yeah.
I agree with you too. That like podcasts like that, content like that. Meeting people who just kind of casually say like, yeah, I mean, I spun it up. It makes $100,000 a month. And
dude, I love that shit.
Because I agree. Like for me, it was always like your similar story to when you got the 3K offer. Like, I had a couple moments like that where it was like, no, this can't be real. I'm making money.
Like they added an extra zero.
Like I'm making money without like, flipping stuff or whatever. It's like, no, this is free money. Like and even now, like, sometimes I have to be like, you can't get excited about $1,000 or $2,000 because you have to spend time on bigger opportunities, but it's still cool and exciting. I find,
absolutely, man. Absolutely. Yeah. I think like it's good. I always try to have those like, boyish, like childish, like excitement about all of this, man. Like, holy smokes. Like sometimes I like to take a step back and realize and look, see how far you've come and realize it's insane that I'm just like at home making videos, making a living for myself. Like that is nuts. And like, I try to never forget that, but you do have to like, be like, okay, but we can do a little bit more,
What was your job before that you quit last year?
I worked at PepsiCo as a district manager.
Okay.
So I worked for them for like a year and a half. They did like a leadership program. And so when I was coming out of school, my goal was I want to go to a reputable organization. I wanted to make $70,000. I remember, and I wanted to $70,000 after the benefits and everything like that. It was like, it's tough, but it's attainable. And I wanted a company that really invests in like the people. And so PepsiCo, one of the best that I've ever one of the best companies in the world, like fit that. And I was lucky enough to get an offer in my last year. And like, dude, I have nothing but great things to say about them because they really set up things for me, gave me a great base. And then from there, then they really understood my content thing. Let me do my thing. Let me work in the space. And I swear they knew I was leaving like months before I said. They knew like I wasn't away. I was delivering, executing on my work, but like they knew how much I cared about it. And it was just like the love that I had for it. I can't really hide it. And so they were like, yeah, okay, no, we know, Nate, you're good, baby. And so that's where I was before.
Did you wait until your content was making a certain amount of money?
Yeah, man, it was matching what I was making from PepsiCo.
Okay.
Like,
so you were like, you were making 70 or whatever from there. And you were like, I need to make that much at least before I can go full time. And
yeah. I think at that time I was making a little bit more. I think it was around 80, 85. And so I had a few great months. Like I was making money and then I had a few great months. And I was like, man, like if I don't make a single dollar for the rest of the year, I don't care. Like I want to pursue this. I've got enough in the bank because I've been practicing good habits. I can do X, Y, and Z. I mapped out my expenses, and I go, what's a year, man? Like, let me see what I can do with a year. Yeah. And so I said, screw it. And I quit, friggin' had my money, enough money set aside. If I didn't make a single dollar, which ultimately didn't happen, I did keep making money and made more money. And it was a good thing that I did that. But I was prepared to jump, right? I had a parachute to land as opposed to just diving and just hoping I could find something here. Like I was ready to go. And so it took a lot of risk, but like to me, it's just like, man, like the risk to me is just sitting around doing nothing. Yeah. And then having my opportunity waste away. Like I can't stomach that risk. The risk I can take is like actually going and trying to do the thing. And if I fail, I fail. But like, I don't want to take the risk of like not realizing what I could be.
Yeah. I think what's cool about content creation, entrepreneurship, there's no ceiling on it.
Right.
And it's funny. I think it must be flipping now because you look at something like that, like you had a good job, right?
Yeah.
PepsiCo, great company, good job. 70K next year, you make 80, it's like, you're not going to make 10 million a year or even 1 million.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like if you would have just rode that, like, eventually you might be making 200K a year. Like, I don't know what the numbers are, but it's so limited. And just like where this content creation thing, like you're like, I want 1 million liquid. I have no doubt you're going to get there pretty soon because it's like, it's right there in front of you. Like you know what you do. You built this audience. It's a lot easier to double that and then hire someone. And then, it's right there in front of you.
Right.
And it's cool that like these opportunities are available to people to go do that and talk about something you like, So.
It's really opened up things. And I think like the reason I'm so passionate about my stuff, man, and whenever somebody reaches out, I try to get back to them. It's like, I want other people to get in on this, man. Like it's crazy. Like you can do this. Like you can make a video and make it about your passion. And like, it's like the Gary Vee thing from like his first book, right? Where he's just saying like, make your passion, like make $60,000 or whatever, like content.
Was Gary a big inspiration for you? Because you mentioned him before.
Dude, I get 100%. Like, Gary's very like memeable. But like he's like probably one of my biggest inspirations because just, he says the same stuff because it's so true. Like, it's just like, get yourself out there, keep consistently working at it. And like, there's a lot out there. And talk about perspective shifts. Like he was like a really big, and it first started with the flipping, like, hey man, you can make like 20 grand just flipping stuff. I was like, what? And then I started making like a few $1,000s in the summers. And I was like, wow, maybe I could. And continually listening to him. And like, it's crazy how right he is over time. He gets clowned so much online, but like he is right a lot of the time.
Yeah. And he's right really early. Like the shit that he was doing about the 64 pieces of content from one video and how he just like filmed his life and then cut it up. And that's like what everyone's trying to do now. That's like 5 or 7 years ago he was talking about this stuff. So I mean, big respect to Gary. What's a hot take you have about personal finance or finance?
Oh man, a hot take.
Like, you kind of hear these things all the time. Like, I'll give you mine. It's kind of like, I think that You were talking about best practices, saving money. Like,
Mhm.
I think that is not worth it until you have a lot of money already.
Okay.
So that's kind of my hot take.
Okay. Okay. Tell me why. Give me an example. Give me an example.
I just think that, people love these things, passive income,
Right.
savings, and moving around. And I think it's a lot of just like
Just like
it's kind of like
procrastination.
playing with your food on your plate a
Yeah.
bit. Like that's bad. But it's like you're not going to make passive income. If you have, $30K that you've saved, like passive income on that, no matter if it's 1% or 8% or 10%, is not going to do anything to
Right.
change your life. And
Okay.
yes, there's compounding, whatever, but that 30K, if you like invest in courses to like learn new skills, or if you're at a job to increase your pay, or to start a business, buy some inventory to flip,
Right.
like it has so much more upside, even though it's not safe, but it's like you can lose a 30K. Like
Yeah.
especially if you're young and, instead of like being safe and saving, I think you're better off trying to go big
Yeah.
or lose everything for a while.
Yeah.
And I think that's a hot take, because a lot of people say, well, no, you should save, you should always compound. But I just think you're better off taking shots.
Yeah, man. I think like a year or two ago, I'd probably be like, well, you're not thinking about this, but no. And now, like, as I'm running my own business, and like I have to go out and earn for myself. And yeah, dude, like taking big risks and putting yourself out there, I am starting to realize that like, overly optimizing, picking the best savings account or like this or that, and like trying to like really get in the weeds. Like for me, that was great. And I think it's great if you're getting started and you want to set up a great foundation.
Yeah.
But eventually the question needs to be, how am I going to maximize my income? And how am I going to reinvest that to continually like take the next step over and over and over and continually do it? And you can't do that by squirreling money away, saving on coffee, things like that. You'll get a little bit of the ways, but like eventually you reach a point where like, you've got a little bit of money in the bank. Like, what are you going to do? Like, how are you going to go out and work the same dead end job? Or are you going to like try to get yourself out of there, or job hop, or, start that business or whatever? And like, yeah, it can certainly be playing with your food if you're not thinking about the bigger picture and like, how am I going to reach these heights and reach them earlier than, 65 or 70, right?
Yeah, that's the thing too. It's like that's how society was constructed, right? Like you get this job, it's safe, you work 40 years, you retire, and that's when you have like your little savings or whatever. And I'm just like, I want to live now, like in your 20s, 30s, like when you're physically the best, when you have the least responsibilities and health problems. Like that's when you want to live, explore the world, spend money, like get experiences. And hopefully that leads to bigger and bigger opportunities where you have way more than you would have if you just saved. But yeah, I just think it's backwards we're all taught. You know?
Man, I'm trying to think of a really, really good hot take that I have. I think it's just, well, I mean, like, this might be a hot take, but like you can just cut this if you don't want to use it, but you like a hot take could perhaps be, you should be asking your boss for a raise like every 6 months. Like
that's
absolutely.
a good one.
You should be going and, documenting every last thing you're doing, going to your boss at every performance review and asking for a raise. And if they're not going to give you a substantial raise, you need to go to a new job. And like this loyalty thing, this long-term 40-year pension career, like everybody knows that's done. Like nobody's going to argue with me on that. But people are scared to jump early. One of the biggest things, and Gary talked about this like years ago. I remember hearing, and I recently did some content on it. It's like, who cares what your resume gap looks like, or your resume like 6 or 8 months, or you're only at this firm for 8 months and another 8 months? Like, yeah, maybe if you're like jumping every like quarterly to a new company, a recruiter's gonna be like, hey man, like why can't you hold a job? But like for most people, it's like a year here, a year there, a year here, a year there. That's fine. That's like the standard. And like, that's how you're going to make those massive, massive salary jumps. Cause most people are going to, work their career, and like you can make a shit ton of money working a job if you're working the right job and if you're doing the right things. And so if you enjoy the flexibility and you're not like that entrepreneurial, that's totally fine. But like, you got to be coming with a bat and like saying like, hey, like I need more money, like 5-10 grand more every single performance review. If you're not getting it, look for somewhere where you can. And that is from, you do that from 22 to 38 years. Like you can really make significant jumps, and then you can really position yourself well for like a really solid life. But like the hot take would be, I guess, you should be like constantly looking for new opportunities, new ways to jump, and obviously career development and yada, yada, yada. But like, it's talking straight money.
Yeah.
That's what it is, man. And you got to be, if they're not going to give it to you, you need to go find somebody that will.
Yeah. I like that because I feel like since I've never had a real job, all my thinking is always around entrepreneurship and people who, and the reality is most people still want to just have a job and work for someone and have a more normal thing. So I think that's refreshing to hear that even within the confines of a job and a bigger company, there's still things you can do to maximize your earning and to 100%. be, I guess, entrepreneurial within that. So
dude, like I literally like know people that like are like late 20s. They make $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 at a job.
Wow.
Like whether it's tech or consulting or investment banking, or like honestly, like just regular execs, like, well, not regular. I mean, obviously if they're making money, they're special, but like you can make substantial money. Like they don't tell you in school, like you can make six figures like a few years out, like truly. And then you can really jump. And if you're really strategic and you're going to the places where they take care of their people, the best firms, and you're constantly investing money back into yourself, sharpening your skill set, being the best at what you do, being so good that they can't ignore you. Like you can make several $100,000 when you get out of school. And like, I didn't know that. I was like, man, it takes like 35, 40, to even and it's like, no, like you can get out. And if you're really jumping around and you're like keeping your, finger on the pulse, and dude, 100% you can make bread. In a
Talk
job.
about limiting beliefs. I remember when I was doing my cookie company, it was my last year of university. So I was like 21, and like friends and people around, like the jobs were like $28K a year, $30K, 35 was like, oh, that's not bad. 50K was like, how'd you get that? I'm like, and this is Canadian too. So even like less in USD. And like, I mean, it was just like 70K to me was like, whoa, if someone made 70K was like, that's crazy. And it's just obviously that was a few years ago, but like not that long ago. And I remember thinking like, if I could ever make $100,000 with my business, like that's just
you're
the
like
end.
Set.
Like
on
I'm
the
good
beach
forever.
Exactly, dude.
And it's crazy as I've been, met so many people over the years, seen so many industries, met people who make way more than that even in a month. It's just crazy how like, your beliefs change. And you're like,
dude, it's constantly, but then, you get to that place and it's like, okay, but like, if I could do that, what else could I do? Right. And you need to work. You have to, it can be a toxic relationship if you let it get out of control and you're never satisfied. And like, you're just always like, whatever. But if you can like balance that with like gratitude of like, hey, like I am so grateful that I'm here. Like, I'm so thankful, but also I would love to like push myself, because why not? Because playing the game is really enjoyable. And so let's see if I can bring in more bread.
So you've done a really good job audience building, obviously hundreds of thousands of followers. Do you have like a community aspect to it, or is it just like something that you're going to launch one day? Like, or is it just audience and you post on your social media channels? Yeah,
man. I mean, like I definitely feel like I have an audience, like a core audience that I engage with. I try to go live. I'm trying to go live frequently. I haven't gone this month, but I'm definitely trying to do more community-based stuff. But in terms of like a Discord or a Patreon or something like that, I actually haven't yet. It is something I think about a lot, but I think that it is really important, and it's something that it's like, dang, I got to get back on that, is like community building. Well, where you can have hundreds of thousands of followers, but that can mean nothing. Like that means nothing if you're not like investing in your community. People actually mess with you. You have your true fans, things like that. There's so many folks that I know, or I've seen so many times rather, like a person with a massive audience, especially with like TikTok, which is really like flip the equation on its head. And like a follower, because of TikTok, honestly means a lot less now. Back when Instagram early on, like if you had 100,000 followers on Instagram, like you were like top cheese, man. And like now, because virality can really bring in those followers quite easily, and then Facebook's copying them, and then Shorts is copying
it's easy
them.
Come,
like,
easy go.
And then it's like the followers is have been diluted, and so because of that, it's more important than ever that you're really investing in your community, and you're giving them a reason to come back to see you, and they're connected to you and your story. And so that is what I'm trying to figure out right now. And that's what I'm trying to figure out with YouTube, and trying to build something there and bring it to my short form content. More than ever, like you have to be focused on community if you want to make it.
So what do you think the things are like to kind of people can do to build that audience and keep it like,
I think you need to do things that are unscalable at first. Like if you're just like you need to be responding to every single comment. You need to be going live all the time. You need to be doing things that like in a year or two you like just can't do because
make
you're too
that
busy.
human connection.
Exactly.
Basically. So
right. You
really
and you can't exactly, and you can't get some friggin' chat GPT thing to write your automated comments and things like that. Like maybe you could spin that up, but I would say like you need to get up in there, and you need to be the one that's talking to them because that's what I did and that's how I grew from like nothing. Like I remember I would spend hours just finding different hashtags and like looking up different posts just to connect with new people and like by hand was typing things out to connect with somebody as opposed to like fire emojis or like whatever. Like, and I did that and it was unscalable, but it worked. And it created this tight knit community. I created like a lot of engagement with my posts and that gave me like the launch pad that I needed when that TikToks and all this stuff came out. Like I was able to like go. And so trying to get back to that, those more unscalable things, that human touch, I think it's just so important early on. And if you can mix that with the viral content too, bro, like it's over, bro. Like you win, you know?
Yeah. Was there one video that like were your followers like flat and then went crazy, or was it gradual?
Yeah, no, it was definitely. I remember the first one was a Costco video where the thing is about TikTok, and TikTok in particular, but like Instagram as well, is like the followers that come from it are really dependent on the call to action. So like a lot of my earlier videos, like I would say, follow for more, you know, or I integrated in the script. And like these days I don't say it as much because like, I don't know, I'm a little bit more particular about the script and I want it to be more real. And so I'm willing to like not say that call to action. But like if you have a call to action on a viral video, the amount of followers you get is insane. Like I think I got like 40,000, 50,000 followers in like 2 days or something like that from like video. It was just Costco. Like what does the asterisk star mean? And it's like, oh, it's like going out of, you know, they're not going to restock it. So like stock up. And like, that's the video. But like, people are like, whoa. And, you know, it did super well. And because I said, you know, if you want more tips like this, follow for more. And like, you know, that really smashed it. So if you're just starting out, like having a call to action is like super huge to building an audience. And I think like that was one that I was like, whoa, like I remember, it was like 80 to 130 or something like that. And there's a few other times like negotiation videos where I think I gained like 150,000 over a week or something like that. So I've had a lot of big jumps and now it's been a lot more gradual because I'm not constantly saying follow. Like I'm a lot more chill now. But like, you know, and I focus more on like the content and the views and things like that. But definitely if you want to grow an audience, like the call to action is important.
So, okay, last thing before we wrap up, let's brainstorm right now quickly.
Yeah. For
Money Talks. Like we're trying to create great content. We have the shorts, we have the TikToks. So like what can we do what's a video idea? What should we talk about? What value should we provide to people? Like, you know?
Yeah, dude,
let's come up with some new ideas.
Like if I was you, I would go and study like the best podcasts that are out there. And not only that, I would study the ones that have a wicked short strategy. And like one that comes to mind is Jumpers Jump. They're a podcast based out of Toronto. They're massive. They've got like, I think 6 or 7 million followers. And they run this podcast. And it's formulaic how they do it. And they do these videos where it's like, have you heard of this theory? Right. So the guy will say, yo, have you heard of this like McDonald's theory? And they're like, that's the hook for like every single thing. And it's like so predictable in the sense of like, they could just do that with anything. Have you heard about this theory or that theory? Like there's millions of like theories that are out there. Or have you heard about the Beyonce's ring theory? And it's just,
I gotta know.
What is that? Like I have to know. And so they run that. And they integrate that into their podcast. And so similar to what we were saying before the pod, it's like you need to know what sorts of content you want to get in out of the interview. And so you don't want some that's just like unintentional clip to come out of it. Like, oh, that could be a great clip. It's like, yo, like I have a few key questions here that will probably bring out some sort of like awesome sort of like clippable response. And like that is how I would structure the pod. And like I think we've kind of did that a bit with some of the questions today, which is great, right? So continue to do that. But like really, man, I'm all about the studying, bro. Like I will say that it's all about looking and seeing who's doing it big and how can I do it honestly better? Like how can I add my spin? How can I do it my way? But look at the consistencies across the different creators and say, okay, well, they're all doing this thing. So maybe if I did this thing and I added this and then I changed it, or, you know, for example, sometimes I'll see somebody do a video on a topic like, employment law. I remember was one recently I did like series that did quite well. And I saw this guy did thing he's basically saying your employer can't do these 3 things, and he just listed them out. I'm like, wow, okay, maybe I can make a script off one of those scenarios, and then I could have a boss, and I could have the person, and then the boss tries to say this, and the guy says, well, you can't do that. And like, to me, it's like I got the inspiration from the thing, but I completely made a different thing out of it. And so deriving that is what I would say. So I would go super hard on that, bro.
Love it.
Yeah.
That's helpful. All right, man. Appreciate you coming on.
Dude, it was dope,
Yeah,
man.
man.
It was such a good episode, my man.
It's awesome.
Bro,